This is the story of a man and the dog he loved. The man is Chris Sontag Ratty. If you're wondering where the dog is, well, that's where we'll begin. 2 years ago, cancer claimed the life of Chris's 12-year-old boxer Rottweiler mix, his best friend with the funny name.
People say, why do you keep saying everything to your dog? Are you calling your dog everything? Yeah, that's my dog's name.
Everything. You want to go for a ride?
Chris says he literally picked everything's name out of a hat when he got her as a puppy.
You want to go to the beach?
It turned out to be as perfect as it was random. Everything became just that to Chris.
I guess some people have religion and some people have, their materialistic things, but for me it was the dog.
During some tough times in the past, tempted down some dark roads, one thing, Chris says, always kept him from going too far astray.
And anytime I got into troubled water, she was like extra reason for me to make sure to get out and stay out. No matter what, I had her as like this responsibility, and I never let that go.
You can imagine what it was like for Chris to lose her. 2 years later, it still hurts.
This is like my favorite picture I have of us.
But if time wouldn't heal the wound, perhaps kindness might ease the pain. It's why last month Chris put this post on Instagram, promising to send anyone a free tennis ball if they just promise to use it to play with their dog, like Chris wishes he could his. He started with 100 balls and low expectations.
I figured I was going to be sitting in my room with about 80 or 90 tennis balls, but it didn't happen like that.
Chris exhausted his initial supply practically overnight, and now has a waiting list hundreds of dogs long. People from around the country, even the world, sending in requests with notes of thanks and encouragement, and then sending back proof of Chris's good deed.
It wasn't just about everything, and myself. It was about affecting other people and like getting them in contact with their pets. So that may be just a backyard dog on a chain, So hopefully they'll let the dog off the chain and throw the ball or something,
It's a lesson all of us can learn from, really. If you ever feel like you've lost everything, just throw a little love out into the world and watch it brought right back to you. As president of his neighborhood council, Cesar Zepeda is something of a watchdog for Richmond's Hilltop District. Though, truth be told, there is one spot in the neighborhood
here you see his little stepping stones
that Cesar has never had to watch.
So this is a picture of it.
For the past 12 years,
this little white thing here, that's an angel.
Someone else had clearly been doing that.
He would bring different flowers.
A roadside memorial along San Pablo Avenue to an unknown victim, maintained by an anonymous caretaker.
Somebody kept coming back. The holidays, it changed for the holidays. For Christmas, he would put a Christmas tree up. There would be lights at night. So it doesn't matter what time of day or night you drove, there was something different all the time.
The memorial might have remained just a neighborhood curiosity, except Chevron, who had graciously allowed it to exist on its property for more than a decade, said it needed to use the land. After all those years, all that work, Cesar couldn't bear to think of the memorial being destroyed.
There was love that was oozing out of the decorations. You can tell this wasn't just any other memorial.
But just who did it belong to? Who had been sneaking in the middle of the night after night, to work on it? Chevron agreed to leave a note asking for that person to call them.
I just ignored it, because I knew what was coming, or at least I thought I did.
That person was Raymond Olson.
This is one of my favorites.
His 22-year-old only son, also named Raymond, was killed by a drunk driver on the spot in 2003.
It's like there's a whole other dimension of pain that you just don't think can exist. They just bring back memories.
Raymond poured all that pain into the memorial, haunted by the fact that one day, when both he and it were gone, his son would be forgotten. But that day is not coming.
Where do I start?
thanks to this one.
I'm wondering where I'm going to start.
Raymond's sister urged him to answer that letter, and so he did. What he learned was that Cesar and Chevron had a plan to erect a permanent memorial, a bench, and a plaque at a nearby park.
I can't find the words to thank you all enough, all of you.
Raymond says he now thinks he'll be able to start living his own life once again, one that's been on pause for the past dozen years. Still, he'll need a little time to think about what that life will be like. But he does know just where he'll be sitting to figure it out. Santa Cruz. Just say the name and certain scenes, certain sports come immediately to mind. Football, though, is not one of them. And not without good reason.
We had a reputation. I wouldn't say it was for good football.
In 1996, Wally Rizaki was the quarterback of the Harbor High School Pirates, a team the year before who had won just a single game. But not Wally's year.
We sort of shocked the city and all the rivals and the other teams by going undefeated.
This is the game of their life. This is the
Undefeated and playing for the league championship against their bigger, stronger rival, the also undefeated San Lorenzo Valley Cougars. It was a rainy, sloppy affair that at the end of regulation was tied 14-14. Thing was, back in 96, there were no rules for overtime in high school football. So that was it. The teams were co-champions. Except the referees then offered to stick around if the teams wanted to keep playing until there was a winner, just for bragging rights. The refs turned to the Harbor coach, who turned to Wally.
And I just looked at my coach and I just really subtle, I said, Coach, I'm done. Let's take the tie. I'm good. Let's take it. We're champions.
But here's what I'm saying.
It was a decision Wally had 5 seconds to make and 20 years to live with. San Lorenzo Valley players never missing a chance to call him out for quitting on his team.
Wally and I played together for 2 years after high school, and we still razzed him for it every day.
Wally says it never bugged him too much until a Facebook post 2 years ago brought up the game once again. Wally looked back as a 37-year-old man and didn't like what he saw his younger self do.
It bothered me enough to where I wrote a letter to my teammates. Said, that day I realized that I'm not ashamed of quitting. I'm ashamed of not asking you guys or looking to you and saying, I'm scared. I don't want to do this. And maybe you guys would have looked at me and said, don't worry about it. We got you.
Let's line it up. Here we go.
But you can't go back in time and fix a mistake like that, let alone 20 years later. Or can you? For the past 2 years, Wally has been recruiting as many players from that game as possible to hold a rematch and settle the score.
And just make it a 3-step drop pass.
His old coach even flew in from Washington State.
100%. I mean, when they said that they're in, hey, whatever I can do.
I have faith.
The record books wouldn't change, but one man's story might.
We certainly do things that aren't in our character sometimes. But how often do we get to maybe correct it or maybe do it again?
So this past Saturday, the pads went back on, and the 1996 Pirates and Cougars went out to battle one last time. It wasn't the prettiest of games, but it certainly wasn't for a lack of effort or intensity. And after 4 quarters, it was tied again.
Heads is called.
Except this time, you can bet they played overtime. San Lorenzo finally scoring a touchdown and Harbor unable to answer. It's a loss on the scoreboard that Wally considers a win in life.
Epic effort today.
He says there's a saying in football about leaving everything on the field. For Wally, at least on this day, that includes regret.